In the heart of a kingdom divided between nobles and peasants, Duke Adrian Valmont lives isolated in his dark mansion after the death of his wife, Isabelle. He swore never to love again. But his fate changes when he meets Elena, a young villager with the same face as his late lover. Between memories, conspiracies, and a forbidden love, both must face their fears and enemies to discover if love can be reborn from the ashes of pain. The Valmont estate stood tall against the horizon, its stone towers casting long shadows across the rolling countryside. Within its walls lived Duke Adrian Valmont, a man whose name carried both respect and sorrow. Once known for his charm and devotion to his people, Adrian had become a figure marked by grief. Years earlier, tragedy had struck when his beloved wife, Duchess Isabelle, passed away unexpectedly. Her absence had left an emptiness in the halls of the manor and an unhealed wound in Adrian's heart. Adrian was a man of imposing stature, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that carried the first strands of silver. His eyes, storm-gray and unyielding, reflected the life of a man who had endured loss, yet continued to lead. His voice carried authority, but his words were fewer now, as if each one cost him something to utter. The villagers of Valmont whispered that he had sworn an oath never to love again, a promise made over his wife's grave. To him, loyalty meant devotion even beyond death. While the manor was draped in silence, the village below lived in contrast. In the heart of Valmont village resided Elena Moreau, a young woman of modest origins. She lived with her younger brother, Lucien, in a simple cottage near the edge of the forest. Elena was known for her skill with herbs and natural remedies, often tending to the ill and wounded. Her presence was marked by kindness and quiet strength. She had long, chestnut-brown hair often tied in a braid, soft green eyes that reflected warmth, and a graceful figure shaped by work rather than luxury. Those who encountered Elena often felt a strange fascination, though few spoke openly about it. Her face bore a striking resemblance to the late Duchess Isabelle. Older villagers who remembered the Duchess would sometimes pause when they saw Elena, as though witnessing a ghost. To Elena, the whispers were unsettling but unavoidable. She would dismiss them with humility, reminding others that she was only herself, no one else. Lucien, her younger brother, was spirited and fiercely protective. At 17, with freckles across his youthful face and untamed hair, he often worked odd jobs to help sustain their household. He admired his sister deeply, though he sometimes resented the way villagers compared her to a noblewoman she had never met. One autumn morning, Elena ventured into the forest to gather herbs. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As she moved deeper into the woods, her basket slowly filled with wild thyme, chamomile, and healing roots. Suddenly, she heard the sound of hooves echoing through the silence. She froze, her heart quickening. Few nobles ever ventured this far into the forest. Moments later, a rider appeared between the trees. His posture was upright, his movements controlled, and his cloak bore the crest of the Valmont estate. Elena recognized at once that he was no ordinary traveler. The rider slowed, and when he removed his hood, she caught sight of storm-gray eyes and a face worn by grief, yet sharpened by discipline. It was Duke Adrian Valmont himself. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Adrian's expression hardened as though he had seen an apparition. The resemblance was undeniable. Elena, startled by the intensity of his gaze, lowered her eyes politely and curtsied. "My lord," she said softly, her voice steady despite her surprise. Adrian dismounted, his boots pressing into the forest floor. He studied her features in silence, every detail pulling memories of Isabelle from the corners of his heart. The curve of her face, the clarity of her eyes, even the way her hair caught the light, everything echoed the woman he had lost. "Your name?" he asked, his voice deep and controlled. Elena Moreau, my lord. I live in the village below, she answered. Adrian's jaw tightened. He forced himself to look away, to ground himself in the present. You should not wander alone so deep into the woods. There are dangers here. Elena held her basket close. I have gathered herbs here since I was a child. The forest is like a second home to me. There was a pause, heavy and unspoken. Adrian studied her once more, as if torn between disbelief and longing. At last he mounted his horse again. Be cautious, Mistress Moreau, he said firmly before turning his steed toward the manor. Elena watched as he disappeared into the trees, her heart unsettled. She knew little of the Duke beyond the stories told in the village, yet the intensity of his gaze lingered within her. She sensed a storm beneath his composed exterior, a grief that had not healed. Back at the manor, Adrian walked through the silent halls with measured steps. His steward, Marcus, awaited him in the study, but Adrian delayed. He stood before a portrait of Isabelle, his late wife. The painted eyes, kind and familiar, seemed to accuse him of betrayal for even acknowledging another woman's likeness. Adrian's hand clenched at his side. I swore an oath, he whispered to the empty hall. I will not break it. Yet no matter how firm his words, the image of Elena in the forest refused to leave his thoughts. Thus began the story of two lives bound by fate, one marked by an unhealed vow, the other by a resemblance she never asked to bear. Neither yet knew that their encounter was the first step into a path filled with trials, secrets, and choices that would test the limits of loyalty and the strength of the human heart. The next morning in Valmont village began quietly, with the golden light of dawn illuminating the cobblestone paths. Elena Moreau stepped outside her modest cottage, carrying a small basket filled with herbs she had collected the day before. Her green eyes, calm yet alert, scanned the horizon for any sign of danger or disturbance. Despite her usual serenity, a small unease had settled in her heart since her encounter with Duke Adrian. She could not explain why, but the memory of his storm-gray eyes lingered. Her younger brother, Lucian, emerged from the cottage carrying firewood. At 17, he already had the strong hands of a laborer, and his freckled face showed both determination and concern. You've been quieter than usual, he said, lowering the wood. The village gossip spreads quickly. People are already talking about your meeting with the Duke yesterday. Elena adjusted the braid of her hair and shook her head. I did what anyone would do. The horse was frightened and he needed help. Nothing more, Lucian. Lucian frowned, unconvinced. It's not just that. They say you look like her, Duchess Isabelle. Elena froze for a brief moment. The resemblance had been mentioned before, but hearing it now from someone she trusted felt weightier. She looked down at her hands. I am not her. I cannot be her. I am simply Elena Moreau. Meanwhile, across the hills at Valmont Manor, Duke Adrian sat alone in his study, staring out at the mist-shrouded forest. His storm-gray eyes were heavy with thought, reflecting the struggle within him. His fingers traced the edge of the golden ring he still wore, a token of his love and loyalty to Isabelle. The resemblance between Elena and his late wife was not just remarkable, it was unsettling. Every detail of her appearance echoed memories he had vowed never to revisit. He heard the soft knock at the door and turned to see Marcus, his steward. Marcus, a man in his 50s with a calm and loyal demeanor, entered carefully. My lord, news from the village. The people speak often of the girl who aided you in the forest. Her name is Elena Moreau. Adrian's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. And? Marcus hesitated. They say she has a gentle heart, skilled with herbs and tending the sick. Some remark on her resemblance to the late Duchess. Adrian looked away, out the window. Rumors mean nothing, he said, though his voice betrayed the slightest tremor. See that they remain just that. Do not allow this matter to spread. Marcus inclined his head, aware of the tension in his lord's tone. Yes, my lord. Despite his order, Adrian's thoughts remained with Elena. He recalled how she had calmly approached the frightened horse, her hands steady, her voice soothing. He remembered her green eyes, so vibrant and alive, and the faint blush that had colored her cheeks in the autumn sunlight. He had convinced himself repeatedly that no one could replace Isabelle, yet the girl's image lingered unbidden. Back in the village, Elena tended to Madame Fournier, an elderly neighbor suffering from arthritis. Elena applied a poultice to the woman's wrists, moving with practiced care. "This will ease the pain for a while," she said softly. Madame Fournier studied her. "You are remarkably skilled, child. Your mother's hands must have taught you well. But tell me, do you think of the rider you saved yesterday? Have you seen him since?" Elena shook her head. "No, I do not expect to. He was a noble, and I am not." Madame Fournier's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be wary, Elena. Fate has a way of returning what it takes, sometimes in ways we cannot predict." Lucien, watching from the doorway, frowned. "You speak as if this will change everything. He is a duke. We live in this village. How could he—" Elena smiled faintly, though unease lingered. "I do not know, Lucien, but I must continue as I always have. My path is mine." Later that evening, Adrian rode through his lands, letting the cold wind clear his mind. The sight of the village from the hills reminded him of the forest encounter. He was certain of one thing. He could not ignore the resemblance, but he also knew that pursuing it would be dangerous, not only for himself, but for her. Unseen, Lord Sebastian Montclair, Adrian's rival, observed from a distant hill. Sebastian's calculating blue eyes gleamed as he listened to reports from his spies in the village. Every movement of Elena, every whispered word in the market, was noted. He smiled to himself, knowing that a single misstep from Adrian could provide him the advantage he had long sought. As night fell over Valmont village and manor alike, two lives, one noble, one humble, were now unknowingly entwined. Adrian fought the growing curiosity in his heart, while Elena remained unaware of the profound effect her presence had on the Duke. The stage was set for events neither could yet foresee. The sun rose over Valmont village, painting the cottages and fields in soft shades of gold. Elena Moreau moved through her morning routine, preparing breakfast for herself and her brother Lucien. Her green eyes, alert and thoughtful, lingered on the forest beyond the village, where she had first encountered the mysterious rider. Though she tried to dismiss the memory, it returned unbidden with every rustle of the wind through the trees. Lucien carried firewood into the cottage, his face still shadowed by concern. "You have not been yourself lately," he said. "Since the Duke appeared in the forest, you've been distracted. I can see it in your eyes." Elena shook her head. "I am fine, Lucien. He is a noble, and our paths are unlikely to cross again. I must focus on what I can control." Despite her reassurance, Elena's thoughts lingered on that brief encounter. She remembered the Duke's storm-gray eyes, the firmness of his hand on the horse's reins, and the brief tension that had passed between them. There was an unspoken intensity that unsettled her. She had helped him out of instinct, not expectation, yet the memory of his gaze stayed with her. Meanwhile, at Valmont Manor, Duke Adrian Valmont sat in his study, reviewing ledgers and estate reports. His posture was straight, his face calm, but inside, a quiet turmoil brewed. He could not stop thinking about Elena, the girl who had saved him from a panicked horse in the forest. Her presence reminded him of Isabelle, yet she was entirely her own person. The resemblance was uncanny, and it haunted him. Marcus, the loyal steward, entered quietly. "My lord, there have been rumors circulating in the village about the girl, Elena Moreau. Some speak of her skill with herbs, others remark on her resemblance to the late Duchess." Adrian's jaw tightened. I said silence, Marcus. Rumors are dangerous. We cannot afford distraction. Yes, my lord, Marcus replied, though he sensed the conflict within his master. Adrian's gray eyes, usually steady, flickered with a hidden uncertainty. Later that morning, as Elena gathered herbs near the edge of the forest, she noticed movement among the trees. A figure approached, not mounted this time, but on foot. Adrian had dismounted earlier, choosing to ride through the paths unnoticed. He watched Elena at a distance, taking note of her gentle movements, the precision with which she picked each herb. The resemblance to Isabelle was undeniable, yet Elena carried herself with a calm independence that was wholly her own. Elena felt a sudden chill, as if the forest itself had shifted. She turned and saw him standing among the shadows of the trees. "My lord," she said cautiously, recognizing him immediately. Adrian's expression softened slightly. "Mistress Moreau," he replied. His voice was lower than before, almost hesitant. "You should not be alone in the forest. There are dangers even I cannot control." Elena nodded. "I am careful, my lord. The forest has been my home since childhood." He stepped closer, studying her face. "You resemble someone I once loved," he said quietly, almost to himself. "It is unsettling." Elena tilted her head slightly, her green eyes meeting his. "I do not know what you mean," she said gently, sensing the weight in his words. Adrian shook his head, regaining composure. "Forget it. I must return to the manor." He paused as though resisting the urge to speak further, then turned and walked back toward the path that led to his estate. Elena watched him go, feeling a mixture of relief and confusion. She did not understand the feelings his presence stirred within her. She returned to her work among the herbs, though her mind wandered. The forest, once a place of comfort, now seemed charged with anticipation. At the same time, across the hills, Lord Sebastian Montclair received reports from his agents. He learned of Adrian's encounters with Elena Moreau and smiled coldly. Her resemblance to Isabelle was a weakness he could exploit. "Every story has its vulnerability," he murmured. "This one may be mine." Night fell over the village and the manor, and two lives, one noble, one humble, remained bound by a growing, unspoken connection. Adrian wrestled with his vow never to love again, while Elena unknowingly became the center of attention that could alter both their fates. The forest and village lay in quiet anticipation of the days to come. The first week after their encounter passed with quiet tension. The villagers of Valmont spoke more freely about Elena Moreau, whose resemblance to the late Duchess Isabelle had become the subject of curiosity and awe. Elena carried on with her daily routine, gathering herbs, tending to the sick, and ensuring her younger brother Lucian had all he needed. Yet even in her modest cottage, a restless energy filled the air, a sense that something beyond the village was shifting. Lucian, noticing his sister's distraction, finally spoke one morning as they worked in the garden. "You think too much about the Duke," he said, arranging seedlings in neat rows. "Why let a man from the manor occupy your thoughts? We have our lives here, and that should be enough." Elena paused, brushing dirt from her hands. "I do not think of him in a way that troubles my duties," she replied calmly. "It is merely unusual to meet someone so different from anyone else I have known." Her words, careful and measured, hid the truth. The brief encounter in the forest had left a lasting impression, one that she could not yet understand. The forest itself seemed to whisper reminders of that day, the sudden rush of the horse, the firmness of his hand, and the intensity of his storm-gray eyes. Meanwhile, at Valmont Manor, Duke Adrian Valmont struggled with a restlessness he could not name. He walked the corridors with measured steps, yet his mind returned repeatedly to Elena. Despite his vow never to love again, despite the memory of Isabelle, he found himself recalling the way Elena had moved, spoke, and observed the world. Her independence and calm strength contrasted sharply with his grief, yet it fascinated him. Marcus, ever loyal, noticed the change in his master's demeanor. "My lord," he said one evening, as Adrian examined letters from neighboring estates, "perhaps it is time to set aside distraction and focus on matters that require your attention." Adrian's gray eyes, shadowed with emotion, did not meet Marcus's. "There is no distraction, Marcus," he said firmly, though the words lacked conviction. "Only an observation. Keep the village quiet. We cannot allow unnecessary attention to grow." Back in the village, preparations for the annual harvest festival were underway. Colorful banners adorned the main square, and stalls were being erected for local vendors. Children practiced dances while the elders arranged tables for communal feasts. Elena carried a basket of herbs toward the square, intending to offer small remedies to anyone in need. As she walked, she noticed movement from the edge of the square. Duke Adrian had come, walking unaccompanied. His presence caused an immediate hush, not just because of his rank, but because of the quiet authority he exuded. People whispered among themselves, amazed that he had chosen to appear without attendants. Elena's heart quickened. She did not expect to see him again so soon, and yet here he was, observing the village with careful attention. Their eyes met briefly, and a subtle acknowledgment passed between them. Adrian gave a slight nod, a silent recognition that neither spoke aloud. The festival proceeded with music and laughter, but an undercurrent of tension remained. Elena continued her work among the villagers, offering her knowledge of herbs and simple remedies. She helped a child who had scraped a knee, applied salves, and offered guidance to those who sought it. Adrian, meanwhile, observed from a discreet distance, noting her diligence, her calm authority, and the kindness that radiated naturally from her. Unseen, Lord Sebastian Montclair watched from the shadows beyond the village. His calculating blue eyes followed Elena's every movement. "She moves through the village like a spirit," he said to his advisor. "Adrian will not be able to resist noticing her. We must act carefully." As evening approached, lanterns were lit along the square, casting a warm glow on the festival. Elena and Lucian shared a quiet moment, watching the villagers dance and celebrate. "We live our lives," Lucian said softly. "But sometimes the world outside finds a way to touch us, even when we do not invite it." Elena nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The encounter in the forest had been brief, yet it had set a chain of events in motion, an unspoken connection that neither she nor the Duke could ignore. As lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, the village and the manor alike felt the subtle threads of fate drawing two lives closer, while the shadow of rival intentions lingered unseen. The morning after the festival was quiet, with sunlight filtering through the branches of the forest and falling gently upon Valmont village. Elena Moreau rose early, preparing herbs and remedies for the villagers, as she did every day. Her green eyes scanned the horizon, and though she appeared calm, her thoughts lingered on Duke Adrian Valmont. She could not understand why his presence had unsettled her so profoundly. Lucien, carrying firewood into their cottage, glanced at his sister. "You think about him more than anyone else. Is it his rank or something else?" His freckled face displayed both curiosity and concern. Elena shook her head, adjusting her braid. "I do not think of him in terms of rank. It is the intensity of his presence, the way he moves and speaks. It is unfamiliar to me, and that is all." Meanwhile, at Valmont Manor, Duke Adrian walked through the hallways with his usual measured steps, yet his mind was restless. He could not dismiss the memory of Elena, the girl who had saved him in the forest. Her resemblance to his late wife Isabelle was striking, but her independence and humility distinguished her as entirely unique. His heart, long guarded by grief, felt an unfamiliar tug. Marcus, his loyal steward, noticed the tension in Adrian's demeanor. "My lord, the village continues to speak of the girl. She is skilled with herbs and carries herself with dignity. Perhaps it is best to ensure she remains untroubled by attention." Adrian's storm-gray eyes, shadowed with emotion, met Marcus's. "She is not a noble," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Yet she stirs memories I thought I had buried. I cannot let this interfere with my responsibilities, Marcus. Keep her safe." Unbeknownst to both, Lord Sebastian Montclair, Adrian's rival, had intensified his surveillance. His blue eyes gleamed as reports arrived of Elena's daily activities. Every herb she carried, every village resident she helped, was noted. Sebastian's mind raced with possibilities. If Adrian's heart can be influenced through her, then she becomes the key to his weakness, he whispered to his advisor. That afternoon, Elena ventured closer to the forest, searching for rare herbs for a remedy Madame Fournier had requested. The path was familiar, but the deeper she went, the more cautious she became. Her senses were alert to every rustle of leaves and movement in the shadows. Suddenly, a figure appeared from between the trees. Elena recognized him immediately. Duke Adrian Valmont, walking on foot, alone. His presence was commanding yet measured, the same calm authority she had noticed before. "My lord," Elena said softly, curtsying with respect. Adrian studied her face, noticing the subtle warmth in her expression, the concentration in her green eyes. "Mistress Moreau," he replied, his voice low, "you should not be alone here. Even in familiar places, danger can arise." Elena nodded, holding her basket of herbs close. "I am careful. The forest has been my companion since childhood. I know its paths and its dangers." He paused, his gaze lingering on her face. "You remind me of someone I once loved," he said quietly. His voice carried both grief and restraint. "It is unsettling, yet remarkable." Elena's brow furrowed slightly, sensing the weight of his words. "I cannot be that person," she said gently. "I am only Elena, and I cannot replace anyone." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded, turning his attention to the path ahead. "I do not ask you to be anyone but yourself," he said. "Still, be cautious. The forest can hide many things, some of which are not visible until it is too late." Elena resumed her search for herbs, though her mind remained partially with the Duke. She felt a strange pull, an unspoken connection she could not explain. At the same time, Adrian's thoughts remained with her, caught between memory and the unexpected stirrings of hope. Unseen, Sebastian Montclair watched from the edge of the forest, a faint smile on his lips. "Soon, their fates will intersect more directly," he said, his voice cold. "And when they do, every choice they make will serve my plan." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the village and the manor, Elena returned home with her basket full. The day had ended quietly, yet the invisible threads of fate were weaving tighter. Both Duke Adrian and Elena felt it, though neither yet understood the full path ahead. The first shadows of secrets and challenges were forming, setting the stage for trials that would test courage, loyalty, and the delicate balance between past and present. The morning air in Valmont village carried a crisp chill, signaling the approach of early autumn. Elena Moreau rose with the sun, as she did every day, preparing herbs and medicines for the villagers. Her green eyes, sharp yet gentle, scanned the forest edge as she walked with her basket. She had grown accustomed to its presence, yet a subtle unease lingered since her encounters with Duke Adrian. There was a tension in the air she could not name. Lucian, her younger brother, joined her with a bundle of kindling for their small stove. "Sister, you seem restless," he said, concern etched across his freckled face. "Is it the Duke again, or something else?" Elena adjusted the strap of her basket, her braid brushing over her shoulder. "It is neither worry nor fear, Lucian. The forest and the village feel different now, as if something is approaching. I cannot explain it." As they spoke, a messenger arrived at their cottage, carrying a sealed letter. The envelope bore the crest of Valmont Manor. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she accepted it, breaking the wax seal. Her green eyes widened as she read the contents. Mistress Moreau, your presence in the forest and your assistance have not gone unnoticed. I request your immediate presence at Valmont Manor to discuss matters of importance. Duke Adrian Valmont. Elena paused, her mind racing. An invitation, or perhaps a summons, from the Duke himself was unprecedented. She glanced at Lucian, whose expression was a mixture of pride and worry. He wishes to see me? At the manor? Yes, she said quietly, folding the letter. I must go. There is no choice. Meanwhile, at Valmont Manor, Duke Adrian prepared for her arrival. His storm-gray eyes reflected a mixture of determination and hesitation. He had spent nights contemplating this moment, unsure if he could confront the feelings her presence evoked. Yet he knew he had to. Adrian's grief for his late wife, Isabelle, had shaped him for years, but Elena's resemblance and unique presence had stirred emotions he could not ignore. Marcus, observing the Duke's tense demeanor, approached cautiously. My lord, the girl will arrive shortly. How should I prepare her reception? Adrian's jaw tightened. Treat her with respect and caution. She is not accustomed to the manor. Ensure her comfort without drawing unnecessary attention. I cannot risk exposing her to scrutiny or gossip. As Elena approached the gates of the manor, she felt a strange mixture of fear and resolve. The manor, grand and imposing, loomed above her, its stone walls echoing centuries of history and grief. The same hands that had tended the forest's herbs would now cross the threshold of nobility into a world unfamiliar yet intimately tied to the Duke she had met. Duke Adrian awaited her in the study, a room lined with books, portraits, and relics of the past. His posture was rigid, his eyes fixed on the portrait of his late wife. Yet when Elena entered, carrying her basket and bowing slightly, he looked up. The resemblance was undeniable, yet she was herself, independent, strong, and unassuming. Welcome, Mistress Moreau, he said formally, though his voice carried an underlying tension. I asked you here to discuss your safety and your presence in areas where danger may be present. Elena met his gaze steadily. I understand, my lord. I never intended to overstep boundaries. I merely followed what I believed to be right. Adrian studied her, noting the firmness of her stance, the clarity of her green eyes, and the calm assurance in her voice. He realized that though she mirrored Isabelle in appearance, Elena's character was unique, unyielding and wise beyond her years. Just as the conversation began to settle, a shadow appeared at the edge of the manor grounds. Lord Sebastian Montclair had followed reports of Elena's arrival and moved closer to the manor. From the shadows, he observed, calculating the best way to manipulate the Duke's attention and exploit the vulnerability he believed Elena represented. Inside, Adrian remained unaware of Sebastian's presence, yet the tension outside foreshadowed the coming challenges. Elena, unaware of the observer, continued to discuss her work with herbs, village care, and the importance of caution in the forest. As dusk fell, the manor remained a place of quiet anticipation. Two lives, one noble, one humble, were drawn closer, yet the shadow of unseen threats began to gather. Adrian's resolve, Elena's courage, and Sebastian's schemes all moved along a path that would soon intertwine in ways none could predict. The morning sun rose over Valmont Manor, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens and stone paths. Elena Moreau awoke with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Her green eyes reflected both curiosity and caution, for she knew that being summoned to the manor had shifted her life in ways she could not yet fully understand. The memory of Duke Adrian's storm-gray eyes haunted her thoughts, and she felt an invisible tether drawing her toward the estate. Lucian, waiting outside with their modest belongings, noticed the tension in his sister's posture. Sister, "Do you feel it too?" he asked, adjusting the strap of the basket he carried.
"Something is not right. Ever since the Duke sent for you, there's a weight in the air."
Elena nodded.
"I feel it, Lucian. We must be careful. The manor is a world apart from our village. What seems small here may carry great consequences there."
Meanwhile, Duke Adrian Valmont reviewed documents in his study, but his focus was fragmented. The presence of Elena Moreau in the manor, though respectful and cautious, stirred emotions he had carefully buried for years. He had sworn never to love again after the loss of his wife, Isabelle, yet Elena's resemblance to her, combined with her independent spirit, forced him to reconsider the boundaries he had set. Marcus, observing from the doorway, spoke softly. "My lord, you seem troubled. Should I prepare additional security or limit her movements within the manor?" Adrian's storm-gray eyes lifted to meet Marcus's. "She is not in danger within these walls, Marcus, but I cannot ignore the fact that she is now here, and the implications may be far-reaching. Keep your eyes open, though do not alarm her. She must not feel the weight of suspicion." Unseen by both, Lord Sebastian Montclair watched from the edges of the manor grounds. His calculating blue eyes followed every movement of Elena and Adrian alike. He had anticipated her arrival and smiled coldly. "Soon, their trust will be tested," he whispered to his advisor. "And when it falters, we will have the advantage." Later that day, Elena explored the outer gardens of the manor under the watchful guidance of Marcus. She admired the variety of herbs and plants cultivated by the manor's gardeners, noting the differences from the forest and village lands she knew so well. Her green eyes sparkled with curiosity and careful observation, demonstrating her intelligence and adaptability. Adrian appeared unexpectedly, walking among the rows of plants with measured steps. His storm-gray eyes met hers, and a quiet acknowledgement passed between them. "You are thorough in your observations," he said, his tone formal, yet softened by genuine interest. Elena inclined her head. "I have learned to pay attention to details. It is important when tending to both plants and people. The smallest oversight can cause harm." Adrian nodded slowly, impressed by her wisdom. "You are unlike anyone I have known," he admitted quietly. "Your presence is disarming, yet grounding." As they spoke, Sebastian Montclair moved closer, staying hidden among the trees lining the garden. He noted the subtle exchange between Elena and Adrian, recognizing the growing connection that could threaten his plans. His mind raced with strategies to manipulate their interactions, confident that a single misstep could create the division he sought. The afternoon brought news from the village. Marcus delivered a report detailing minor disputes and unusual activity in the surrounding forests. Adrian listened carefully, recognizing the potential for external threats. "Ensure that Elena's movements are discreet," he instructed Marcus. "She must not be endangered, nor should she be made aware of external scrutiny." Elena, unaware of the observation from the shadows, continued her tasks, moving gracefully among the plants and carefully tending to delicate flowers and herbs. Her hands, skilled and steady, reflected both diligence and compassion. Adrian watched quietly, noting her attention to detail and the calm authority she exuded even in unfamiliar surroundings. As evening fell, the manor's gardens were bathed in a warm golden light. Elena and Adrian shared a brief moment of silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. The connection established in the forest and reinforced in the manor remained unspoken, yet undeniable. Outside, Sebastian retreated to his vantage point, his mind calculating the next steps. The unseen threat lingered, a constant reminder that their fates were not solely determined by choice or circumstance. Both Elena and Adrian faced challenges beyond their control, and the delicate balance of trust, courage, and loyalty would soon be tested in ways they could not yet predict. As night settled over the manor, the forest and village seemed to hold their breath, anticipating the events that would inevitably bring both hope and danger into the lives of those bound by fate. The morning light spilled across Valmont Manor, illuminating the grand hallways and ornate chambers. Elena Moreau moved quietly through the corridors, carrying her basket of herbs and remedies for the manor staff. Her green eyes reflected both determination and cautious curiosity. Though she had grown more accustomed to the manor, each step carried the awareness that her presence here had consequences far beyond her understanding. Lucian, who had accompanied her to ensure her safety, noticed the tension in her posture. "Sister, you walk as if the walls themselves watch you," he said softly, adjusting the bundle of herbs he carried. Elena glanced at him, a faint smile touching her lips. "Perhaps they do, Lucienne. The manor is a place of history, memory, and authority. Every stone has seen events that we cannot imagine. We must tread carefully, yet with confidence." Meanwhile, Duke Adrian Valmont observed Elena from his study. His storm-gray eyes, usually sharp and commanding, held a mixture of concern and fascination. He had spent weeks studying her movements, her habits, and her interactions with the villagers and staff. Elena's independence and strength had impressed him, but her resemblance to his late wife, Isabelle, both comforted and unsettled him. Marcus, standing nearby, noted the change in his master. "My lord, you seem preoccupied. Should I intervene or speak to her on your behalf?" Adrian shook his head, his gaze fixed on the portrait of Isabelle. "No, Marcus. I must observe, understand, and guide when necessary. She is capable, intelligent, and cautious. I will not interfere unless absolutely required. Her safety and well-being remain my responsibility." Elena, meanwhile, moved toward the greenhouse to collect rare herbs requested for a local healer. As she walked through the corridors, she felt the subtle weight of unseen eyes. Turning slightly, she caught sight of Adrian in the shadows of a doorway. His posture was controlled, his expression unreadable, yet she sensed his concern. "My lord," Elena said politely, inclining her head, "I did not expect to see you here." Adrian stepped forward, his movements deliberate and calm. "Mistress Moreau, I wish to ensure you are accustomed to the manor and that no harm has befallen you since your arrival. It is important to me that you remain safe." Elena's green eyes met his storm-gray gaze steadily. "I appreciate your concern, my lord. I have been cautious and attentive, and nothing has occurred to disturb the routines of the manor. I intend to continue this way." Adrian studied her for a moment longer, noting the subtle confidence in her posture, the intelligence reflected in her eyes, and the calm authority she carried even in unfamiliar surroundings. "You are unlike anyone I have encountered," he said quietly. "Your presence is both grounding and perplexing. I cannot fully explain it." At the same time, Lord Sebastian Montclair moved closer to the manor grounds, observing from a distance. His blue eyes flickered with calculation as he noted the interaction between Elena and Adrian. Every gesture, every glance, was catalogued for potential manipulation. "Their connection grows," he murmured, "and soon it will be tested. Timing is everything." Later, Elena entered the greenhouse, inhaling the fragrant aroma of herbs and flowers. She worked carefully, selecting leaves and stems for remedies, noting the health of each plant and their subtle differences. Her green eyes sparkled with focus and determination. Adrian followed at a distance, quietly observing her movements. He was impressed by her meticulous attention to detail and her gentle authority over even the smallest of tasks. She commanded respect without asserting dominance, and her presence brought a calm order to the space she occupied. As the afternoon sunlight waned, Marcus approached the Duke. "My lord, there is a messenger from the village. They bring news that requires your attention." Adrian nodded, acknowledging Marcus's report, but keeping his attention partially on Elena. The balance between duty and personal concern weighed heavily on him. He had spent years guarding his heart, yet her presence stirred emotions he could no longer ignore. Elena, unaware of the observer outside the greenhouse, continued her careful work. Each movement, precise and deliberate, reinforced the impression of intelligence, independence, and calm strength. Adrian remained silent, appreciating her focus, the subtle confidence in her stance, and the quiet dignity she exuded. As dusk fell over Valmont Manor, both the Duke and the young healer felt the subtle pull of fate. Each moment shared, each unspoken glance, wove the threads of a connection neither fully understood. Outside the manor, the shadows lingered, the unseen threat of Lord Sebastian looming, a reminder that their growing bond would soon face trials neither of them could ignore. The morning at Valmont Manor began with an unusual calm, the kind that seemed to precede events of significance. Elena Moreau moved quietly through the corridors, her green eyes alert to every sound. Though she had grown accustomed to the manor, a subtle unease lingered in her thoughts. The forest, the village, and now the manor itself seemed to hold secrets she could sense but not fully understand. Lucien, her younger brother, carried a basket of herbs alongside her. "Sister, you seem distracted again," he said softly, his freckled face marked by concern. "Is it the Duke, or something else troubling you?" Elena paused, adjusting her braid. "It is neither simple nor easy to explain, Lucien. There are events unfolding beyond the village, beyond the forest. We must remain cautious, yet attentive." Meanwhile, Duke Adrian Valmont observed Elena from a distance. His storm-gray eyes, always alert, reflected a mixture of concern and curiosity. He had studied her carefully since her arrival, noting her calm authority, intelligence, and kindness. Every movement she made, every interaction with the manor staff, reinforced the impression that she was unlike anyone he had ever known. Marcus, standing nearby, whispered, "My lord, she seems unaware of the attention she receives. Should I intervene if necessary?" Adrian shook his head. "No, Marcus. She is capable and she moves with wisdom. Observe quietly. Only intervene if danger is imminent." Suddenly, a commotion arose at the manor gates. A messenger arrived, his expression tense, carrying a sealed letter and a small, hastily written note. Elena, intrigued, approached to read the letter first. Her green eyes widened slightly as she recognized the seal of a distant estate, one she had never visited. The letter read, "Mistress Moreau, urgent matters require your immediate presence. A threat approaches that concerns both your village and the manor. Your knowledge and caution are essential. An unknown ally." Elena's heart quickened. "Lucien, this is unexpected," she murmured. "We must be cautious. I do not know who sent this, but there is urgency." Adrian, noticing her reaction, approached quietly. "Elena, what troubles you?" His voice was calm, yet his storm-gray eyes held concern. Elena handed him the note. "This message arrived from a distant source. They speak of a threat to the village and perhaps to the manor. I do not know who sent it or why, but it seems important." Adrian studied the note, his mind calculating the possibilities. He had anticipated challenges from Lord Sebastian Montclair, yet this message introduced an unknown variable. "We must investigate immediately," he said. "Your knowledge of the village and the surrounding forests is invaluable. Together, we can assess the situation." Later, the unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman from a neighboring estate, dressed simply but with a presence that commanded attention. She introduced herself as Clara, an herbalist and healer, who had observed unusual activity near the borders of Valmont's lands. Her blue eyes were sharp, and her demeanor reflected intelligence and experience. Elena and Clara exchanged careful greetings, sharing information about the forest, the village, and recent disturbances. Clara revealed sightings of unknown figures moving through the outskirts of the village, individuals who had avoided detection and seemed intent on gathering information. Adrian, standing nearby, listened carefully. His storm-gray eyes shifted between the two women, analyzing every detail. "This is more serious than I anticipated," he said. "We must remain vigilant. Elena, your knowledge is essential. Clara, I appreciate your warning. Together we will ensure the safety of both the village and the manor." The day continued with planning and observation. Elena, Adrian, and Clara mapped potential risks, discussing patrols, safe paths, and communication strategies. Lucien assisted where he could, carrying messages and providing support. As dusk fell, the manor was quiet once more, yet the tension lingered. The unexpected visitor had introduced a new element to their lives, a reminder that even in a controlled environment, unseen threats could emerge. Adrian stood on the balcony, watching the sunset over the village. Elena joined him, her green eyes reflecting the fading light. Though unspoken, a silent understanding passed between them. Their bond had grown stronger through shared responsibility, and together they would face the dangers ahead. Outside the manor, shadows lengthened, hinting at the arrival of forces neither Elena nor Adrian yet fully comprehended. The threads of fate were weaving a complex tapestry, one that required courage, wisdom, and unwavering trust. The first light of dawn filtered through the misty trees surrounding Valmont village. Elena Moreau walked cautiously along the familiar paths, her green eyes scanning the forest for any unusual movement. The past weeks had heightened her awareness. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound, reminded her of the threat Clara had warned them about. Lucien followed closely, carrying a satchel of remedies and supplies. "Sister, are you certain we should be venturing so far today?" he asked, his freckled face tense with worry. Elena nodded, adjusting the strap of her basket. "We must verify Clara's observations. If there are intruders near the village, we cannot allow them to remain undetected. Knowledge is our first defense." Meanwhile, Duke Adrian Valmont rode toward the forest, his storm-gray eyes sharp with focus. He had insisted on accompanying Elena despite her protests, believing that his presence could protect her from potential harm. The Duke's tall, commanding figure moved with precision, reflecting years of discipline and vigilance. His grief for Isabelle, tempered by the growing connection with Elena, gave him a cautious but determined resolve. As they reached a clearing, the forest seemed unnaturally still. Elena's green eyes caught faint footprints and broken branches, evidence that Clara's warning was accurate. Adrian dismounted, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice low but firm. "We do not know what or who we may encounter." Suddenly, movement appeared among the trees, figures cloaked in dark clothing, their intent hidden but clearly hostile. Elena's heart raced, but her training in observation and her knowledge of the forest gave her confidence. She moved to a position where she could monitor the intruders without being seen. Adrian followed her lead, using the shadows for cover. "Elena, your instincts are correct," he said quietly. "They are observing the village. We must act carefully." The intruders appeared to be scouting, likely sent by Lord Sebastian Montclair to gather intelligence on both the village and the manor. Adrian recognized the danger immediately, understanding that any misstep could place Elena and the villagers at risk. Elena signaled Lucien to remain hidden while she approached cautiously. Using her knowledge of the terrain, she led Adrian through paths that offered both cover and strategic advantage. Her green eyes scanned for weaknesses, her movements precise and deliberate. The confrontation began when one of the intruders noticed a broken branch beneath Elena's foot. He raised an alarm, but Adrian's commanding presence and authoritative voice quickly dominated the scene. "Stand down," he ordered, his storm-gray eyes locking on the intruders. "Leave these lands immediately, or face consequences you are not prepared for." Elena stepped beside him, her voice steady despite the tension. "These woods and the village are under protection. Your intentions are clear, but you will not succeed." The intruders hesitated, sensing the determination and coordination of the pair. Adrian's experience in leadership, combined with Elena's intelligence and knowledge of the forest, created a formidable presence. Slowly, the intruders retreated, disappearing into the shadows from which they had emerged. As the forest returned to quiet, Adrian turned to Elena, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "You handled yourself remarkably well," he said. "Your knowledge and courage made all the difference." Elena's green eyes met his storm-gray gaze. "We protected what we could, together," she replied. "I could not have done it alone." The ride back to Valmont Manor was quiet, but filled with an unspoken understanding. Both Elena and Adrian recognized that the bond formed through shared responsibility and danger was growing stronger. Their respect for each other's strengths, combined with trust, laid the foundation for a relationship that neither could ignore. As they returned to the manor, the shadows of unseen threats lingered, but the first step toward safety had been taken. The forest confrontation demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and collaboration could overcome the challenges imposed by external forces. That evening, as the sun set over Valmont Village, Elena and Adrian stood together on the balcony of the manor, watching the horizon. Their past losses and present challenges had shaped them, but the future, uncertain yet hopeful, lay before them. They understood that vigilance, compassion, and shared courage would guide them through the trials yet to come.